that was where I made the wrong call, James. And yeah, that's where I went wrong. I made a decision in 2018 to put 2 grand on wings to win $200. Every time I lost, I would gamble more to try and get back to even. I attempted suicide on 2 occasions.
I'm sorry, mate.
Yeah.
It's the silent addiction, isn't it?
Hi, this is James. Welcome to Slaying Sober, where we tell stories of addiction, recovery, and hope. Wherever you are in your sober journey, know that you do not stand alone.
A trigger warning: on Slaying Sober, we talk honestly about drug use, suicide, and the chaos that comes along with addiction, as well as recovery and hope. Please only listen if you feel it's safe to do so. Take care of yourself. My guest is Shaun, who grew up in a housing commission with just him and his mum. They survived domestic violence and relied on charity and support and were constantly fighting just to make ends meet. Over time, he left school to help provide for the two of them and slowly chipped away at a mortgage and to build a life where he could finally give his own family the Christmases that he never had. That all changed one day when he got caught up in the hype around a champion racehorse named Winx, and he saw what he thought was an opportunity to make a quick buck. That was a decision he now openly calls a stupid mistake. That one bet lit the fuse on a devastating online gambling addiction that saw him lose more than $220,000 in just a few short years, draining his savings, destroying trust with his loved ones, and ultimately taking his hope to the point of multiple suicide attempts. In this episode, we unpack the moment that changed everything, the phone call that led him to Gambler's Help, and how counselling and self-exclusion tools have helped become pillars in his recovery. Shaun also shares how he uses his profile in footy and cricket communities and his lived experience to push safer gambling laws and to stand alongside other addicts and their families. At the core of this story is love. Shaun's relationship with his mum, how growing up in poverty and violence shaped his beliefs about money and safety, and why he's so passionate about helping others who were raised in the same chaos as he was. I hope you enjoy this story with Shaun. If this story lands for you, it would mean the world for me if you could follow Slaying Sober, hit subscribe, or share this episode on your social media or with someone who needs it. I am at Slaying Sober Pod on Instagram. That simple act helps these stories reach more people who think that they're alone. Thank you. G'day, Shaun. Thanks a heap for joining me on Slaying Sober.
Yeah, no problem, James.
I really appreciate it. Now, I'm really interested in and looking forward to getting stuck into your story. Gambling is an area where you do a lot of work in advocacy, and we'll get to your story in a minute. But I know you're a big Tigers fan, mate. It's good to have a passion, and you're obviously right into your sports. Do you support any other sports as well?
Cricket. So I'm a huge Melbourne Renegades fan that are the Big Bash. And
yes,
I'm known as Big Red by the Melbourne Renegades supporters.
Okay, why is that?
So basically I created my own costume. I paint my face and stuff, just like I do with the Tigers, and we have a good time.
Very good. Very good. So you're a bit of that's part of a community that you've helped establish, and obviously that's really important to you.
Yeah, I guess a lot of people, they wouldn't know that I was a gambler underneath all the red gear that I wear, or the Tigers gear, or that, and that there's another person underneath that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's often the way, isn't it? It's sort of the mask and what's behind the mask as well.
Yeah, but I've been doing that for years now, James. So even before I
Yeah.
started gambling. So when it comes to the Tigers, I've given away 100 footballs to the community around Australia, and
Amazing.
I purchase them myself and go to training and get them signed by the players. The club's
Yep.
well aware of that, the Richmond Football Club. So that's
Yes.
something that I'm very passionate about. I aim to try and get to 200 this year, which would be good.
Fantastic, mate. They should make you run through a banner.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
But that's a great act of service and sort of says a lot about you as a person giving to others.
Yeah, you've got to give back to, I guess, the people around you. And certainly, we have disadvantaged people across Australia that barrack for the Tigers and they don't get to do what I do.
Where does that stem from? Tell us about growing up and young Shaun.
Yeah, so young Shaun was very disadvantaged, grew up mostly around alcohol, and
Yes.
as a child and of course family violence. So I was very not my childhood was not happy at all. So that's probably where it stems from. And I like to see children at the footy or kids at the footy, doesn't matter who they are. I don't know them, but if I see them
Yes.
cheering on the team with me, then I reward them.
Yeah. Oh, good on you, Shaun. That's really lovely. And what was your first memory of going to the football?
It was my first memory was going with my mum. I'd go with my mum
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
80s and 90s.
Yes.
And more so the 80s when Richmond were not as good, but still rocked up there. I remember, the old MCG before it had its redevelopment, and we used to be allowed to go underneath the change rooms and go in there and look at the players, and can't do that anymore, of course.
Yeah.
I need to
I
get a
remember
special.
some of that as well. I'm a Carlton man, and we won't bring up the other week's result, but yeah, I remember in the 90s being able to go in the rooms and hang around and smelling the deep heat up the nose and seeing all these heroes walking around in their jocks and drinking beer after the game in the rooms as well.
Yeah, it's so much has changed, James. Whether that's for the good or the bad, I mean, we could argue that forever, but
Yeah.
nothing will change now.
Yeah. So tell us about the first time that you gambled.
Really, I started gambling, and this is the honest truth, is that what I do is gamble on Melbourne Cup Day. So,
Yep.
As a lot of people do, both my wife and I we'd walk the dogs up to the local TA, but
Yes.
we'd put $100 on, I don't know, races throughout the day at Flemington, and
Yeah.
that became a
Yep.
common thing every year on Melbourne Cup.
Yep. Yeah.
When I
It's
guess
a very Australian thing, isn't it? Having the
Yes,
day off from work
yeah,
and
it is.
public holiday and investing in the race that stops the nation.
And that's what they always advertise it as. The race that stops the nation, and very hard race to actually win any money on because
Yes.
there is
Yep.
so many horses in the race. But again, look, it's promoted as a special day. And
And that was the days of the suburban TAB as well, wasn't it?
it was full, wasn't it? It was people everywhere.
Yeah.
People lined up to go in.
Yes.
Now,
Yep.
I'll tell you now, if you went up to your local now, and whether it was a pub or whatever, you're lucky to see half a dozen people in there because everything's just
Yep.
gone.
Yeah, absolutely. So what did you do for a profession when you were in your 20s and when you left school?
I just worked in manufacturing. So I started out so I went to school to year 12. Mum didn't have very much money, and we lived in government housing in West Heidelberg. And
Yep.
so Mum
Was it
didn't
just
have,
you and your mum?
yeah, just me and my mum. And we sort of struggled up to my age of 18, and we relied on, I guess, charities and that sort of thing to get us through. And I felt that, well, it's ironic. I wanted to be a police officer, and that didn't really come through because I had to go to work and get money for mum and help mum out. Yeah.
So she was quite reliant on you providing for the family?
Yeah. Very reliant on me in many ways, because mum
Yes.
had gone through a terrible life with family violence. And I basically got mum out of that situation by just saying, look, I can't stay here no more. And you've got to understand you're listening to a drunken abuser while you're lying in bed. It's basically harming your mum. And there's nothing a 10-year-old can do about it.
I'm sorry you
So,
had to deal with that, Shaun. That's horrific.
no, but it's very real, James. And I guess, I don't want people to go through what I went through. I want people to be, happy in life and enjoy life.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
yeah, that's really what I wanted. And I went to work. First one was a food manufacturer. I worked as a storeman in West Heidelberg. Then I moved on to a textile factory in Thomastown. And then I moved to the automotive industry out at Broadmead.
And I understand when you were there, you suffered a workplace injury.
Yeah, I suffered a workplace injury and subsequently I needed surgery and I had that surgery. But after the surgery, I developed a blood clot and then blood clots on the lung. Then basically I sort of went on light duties for a little while and then I was made redundant. And a month after that, mum found out she had cancer. So I took on the role again of looking after mum.
Yeah. I'm sorry to hear. That's very tough for all of those things to happen in short succession as well.
It lasted 11 months. Mum had lung and liver cancer. Mum was a smoker.
Yes.
So it was a very hard time, James, and it's still
Yeah.
with me now. I often have dreams about, the family violence stuff back when I was 10-year-old. I'm finding it hard for that to go away. It's caused a lot of depression and a lot of, I guess, mistakes. I call them mistakes. I feel like, um, what I did with the gambling in 2018 was an extremely stupid decision, and
Yes.
I still, I still feel the pain of making that decision.
Yeah. Did your mum make it through her cancer diagnosis?
No, she didn't. She lasted 11 months.
Yeah. So
Passed
what year was it that she passed away?
2010.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So your
So
gambling came a fair bit of after this?
yeah, 8 years later. But I was still doing the Melbourne Cup stuff every year.
Yeah.
But it was just sort of, there was a lot of attention around a horse called Winx at the time.
Yes.
Um, and that was where I made the wrong call, James. And yeah, that's where I went wrong.
So what happened with Winx?
So Winx, we all know, won over 20 races in a row. And I made a decision in 2018 to put 2 grand on Wings to win $200.
Wow.
So 90 grand I had in the bank, Apes.
Yeah. So you were quite good with your money.
I looked after my money like, there's no tomorrow.
Yeah. Which was
Ja-
obviously shaped by the way that you grew up,
Oh, you definitely.
poverty and whatnot. So you were very careful about the money that you had, and you'd saved $90,000 in the bank.
That money came from the work cover payout.
Okay. Yep.
Um, without disclosing how much money I did get, it was quite
Yep.
substantial. What I would do from that time, 2009, when I received that money, is I stashed 100 grand of that into a term deposit type thing, and I'd let
Yep.
it grow. I'd let it grow $4,000 a year, and then what we would do is with the $4,000, we'd take the $4,000 out at the end of the year and use it for Christmas. So we'd have a good
Yeah.
Christmas.
Yep.
Because Christmas was, for me,
Yeah.
as a kid, was never really good.
Yes.
So I guess that's what I did, and I did that for the whole entire I did that for 9 years. So Christmas was good for that.
Yeah, you were
period.
using your money wisely
Yeah.
for the betterment of your family
Yeah. And so
and to
coming
make Christmas a really special time.
that was the aim for me to be able to, show my wife and my daughter a good Christmas. Look, I
Yep.
didn't, my daughter growing up having a crap Christmas like I did. So I made
Yes.
sure that, she had lots of presents. We've only got one daughter, and we looked after her. So
Yeah, amazing.
yeah,
And then what happened? So in 2018,
yeah,
the champion racehorse, was getting a lot of publicity about
yes,
being unbeatable.
yes.
And this is what led to you then putting $2,000 on Winx to win such a small amount at $200.
And you have to ask why did I do this, James? Well, I had this idea that I could buy this glass cabinet from IKEA.
Yes,
And I thought Winx was an easy way to make $200.
because you didn't want to touch your savings, but it
No,
felt like an extravagant amount of money to be spending on a piece of furniture
I thought it
that
was
you
just
didn't quite have the money for.
I thought it was just an easy way to I'll get $200 easy because I know it's going to win.
Yeah.
I'll be able to go down to IKEA and I'll just put the other $2,000 back into the savings and just continue on life. Unfortunately, I didn't take out the money. I guess do the right thing.
So how did you physically place that bet?
That's online. It was online.
Yeah. So you deposited to the online account
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
and then you saw that you $2,200 was sitting in your account
correct.
and no physical folding cash exchanged hands.
No, and one
So what happened with that $2,200 from there?
Well, once you get the winning feeling, James, you think you can win more. So having no knowledge of the racing game, whether
Yes.
whether a horse could run in the wet or the dry, you know names of jockeys, prominent jockeys. But me, I had no knowledge of racing. I would always gamble on favourites,
Okay.
and
And how long was it till you had your next bet after Winx won you that $200? Yep, that day.
I may have lost a couple of hundred and then thought, how can I get this back? And then it just became a normal thing, James. And you would try and recover losses, start using.
So it was pretty quick that you had to deposit back into that account?
Yeah, very quick. Yeah, very quick. I mean, you can set limits and all that stuff as we know now, but back then I didn't know that. Again, didn't know nothing about gambling to the extent I know.
Yep.
And I didn't even know gambling was an addiction.
Yeah. Yep.
And
so you had an overwhelming compulsion to keep trying to make back those losses and break even. Was that the goal?
Yes, it was. It was to basically break even, and that was, every time I lost, I would gamble more to try and get back to even. It never happens.
Yep.
It simply never happens.
Yeah. Did you have any other wins along the way?
Yeah, I had wins. There's no doubt about it.
Yes.
Not every single race that you gamble on, me being gambling on favourites only,
Yes.
every race has a favourite winning, and that could mean horses, greyhounds, or the harness racing. So they're the three.
And they were your three
never gambled on AFL or anything like that because I don't know why I didn't do that.
Well, it sounds like you got a passion for those other sports above the punt, you know?
Yeah,
The excitement is within the game itself rather than the chasing dollar figures.
yeah, 100%.
So how far in a hole did this leave you?
Left me. I then, once that 90 grand had gone, I then went to my super fund, withdrew all my super TPD grounds, total permanent disability. So,
Yes.
and then again, I was smart this time, James. Ironically,
Yeah.
I paid off the rest of my house, bought a new car, and put a spa in
Yep.
outside.
Okay.
Gambling was
So you
still
did a
there.
few things.
Yeah, gambling was still there. You know, we call this thing the demon that sits on our shoulders, and it's very similar to anyone that has an addiction. Um, there's always that bloke on the shoulder that's tapping you on the shoulder, saying, you know, go and put some money on this, or when can I have me next drink, or something like that. But it led to
Yeah. So
it
did you
led
have triggers that would have led you to gamble? Like were there certain times or feelings that you had that would make you bet on the horses?
Yeah, you'd see, commercials on TV and that kind of stuff. A lot of advertisement. But really, James, I was doing this every single day for at least, I would say, a good 2 years, a good part, if not more.
Yeah.
Yeah, it slowed down, but the only reason it slowed down is because I was running out of money. That's the only reason.
And were you
And
using the one agency or did you start to spread your expenditure across multiple companies?
when I'd lose a large sum of money, I'd have this fear where I need to stop gambling with this company. And so I'd self exclude from them permanently.
Yeah, okay.
But then
Yep.
I realized, God, there's another 60 companies.
Yes.
Why haven't I heard of them? Well, I have now,
Mm,
and then I
yeah.
started gambling with these. They might be small companies, but they were online, they easy access. You could deposit money the same way you could with, you know, a bigger company. All runs the same
Yeah.
way, James. And
Yeah.
it all goes the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, well, it's not funny at all, but I have heard stories about people that have won and they get excluded quite quickly themselves if they shop around from bookmaker to bookmaker, but they're successful. They very, very quickly get tapped on the shoulder to say, sorry, we're not accepting bets from you. And I look at it that if they've got the ability to find winners, surely they've got the same ability to find a losing gambler as well.
True. They find more losing gamblers than winners. There's no doubt about that.
Yes.
The amount of money that's being lost, and we look at the gambling industry, and there's $32 billion that's lost in this industry. So
Yeah.
there's got to be a portion that's going to be paid out as a win. Okay, but I guarantee
Yes.
you, there's more people out there losing than winning, because
Yeah. Absolutely.
if
Absolutely.
everyone was winning, these online sites couldn't be making any money. It's as
Mm,
simple as
yep. Tell us
that.
about how much have you lost in your gambling career?
So over 3 to 4 years would be probably $220,000. I may have won 500,000, but I gave it all back to them.
Yes.
I gave it all back to them.
Yeah.
That's not,
The bottom line, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. So I lost at least $220,000 over a
Yep.
relatively short period when you look at it. In a lot of cases where most people that are gambling addicts have been doing this for years. I've met people
Mm,
that have been doing it for 30 years. and they are
Yeah,
struggling so bad.
absolutely. And, you explained there about, you grew up in abject poverty, single mum looking after you. You were wise with your money. You were squirreling it away. You were paying off your house. You were doing all of these things that were, taught or not taught to how to be financially sensible, And then, like, that's such a huge amount of money to lose in such a short period of time. How
It
did that
is.
make you feel emotionally
You
and
don't
mentally?
when you're doing this, James. You don't even think about anything else but trying to win. Okay, you
Yes.
and you become so your life becomes so absorbed into this industry and things like bonus bets, and it's all rubbish. It's all
Yeah.
rubbish. They know people like myself who are losing.
Yep.
Love people like me, the people that lose.
Yes. Yep.
You're right. They don't like winners. That's why
Yes.
they don't let them gamble with it. They know who the winners are. People like people.
So tell me about how it affected your life outside of, like, in your home, with your relationships, with your own mental health.
So I'm married. I have a daughter.
Yep.
The hardest thing is you become somebody completely different to, I guess, who my wife married and who was a dad to my daughter, giving good advice. You are a complete different person. Mentally,
Yes.
all you're worried about is turning the TV on and watching the next race. There'd be times where you'd my wife would be watching the TV in another room and I'd pretend that I'm watching the football. Yeah, I was watching the football and I was flicking channels just to check whether my dog had won. The whole time I'm watching football on my phone and I'm gambling. And then I'm watching to see, I'm flicking the channel to see if it won or it didn't win. I was a complete different person.
And
Even
what were the
now,
consequences of that?
well, there's the trust thing. When you want to, for example, you want to give your daughter a couple of $100 to help her out because, you might have had some bills to pay and she hasn't got any sick leave or something like that. And so when you throw her some cash, you then get asked, where did you get it from? Still to this day, I don't think that I fully have the trust of my daughter. I do of my wife. My wife does trust me. My wife understands that it was an addiction and it wasn't the true Shaun McDonough, which is good. My wife could have easily got up and just left. I've seen this happen. I've seen this happen in when was going to Gamblers Help Group, and I've seen cases where people would come to the group and say exactly that they've lost everything, wife, their kids,
Yeah.
everything. And,
Yep.
you know, I didn't want that to happen to me. So I fought hard to get on the right path. And
Yep.
I think I'm
How did you do that?
so I've had certainly I had my family support. It was my daughter who rang Gamblers Help and said that, her dad needed real help. And it was when
What an angel.
unbelievable. I don't know where the truth is, James, I do know where I'd be now. I'd be dead. That's the
Yeah.
truth.
Yep.
Without the people,
Was that something that crossed your mind?
yeah, I attempted suicide on 2 occasions.
I'm sorry, mate.
Yeah,
It's the silent addiction, isn't it?
yeah, it is. It's the silent addiction. Not enough is being done to recognise that people have suicided due to this addiction. You look at the government never put up barriers on the Westgate Bridge for no reason. The government knows that, people due to gambling addiction. They don't recognise it as a mental health issue. Unlike the alcohol and drugs, the powers to be want it to remain silent. They want it to remain silent
Yeah.
because there's too much at stake for them.
Yeah. Yeah, look,
And
it's extremely complex because there's so much money involved. And, there's an argument that, tobacco obviously is really widely spoken of because of its health effects, but also the taxation on it. And the government have completely fucked themselves on that because of obviously all the illegal tobacco trade. But on things like alcohol, prescription drugs, and gambling, there's so much money that the government make out of it, yet it's so disproportionate to the amount that they put back in to the care of addicts that suffer in these areas. Rehabilitation program, mental health support, even advertising, promotional help and the ability to get help. Or as you say, and part of your story is the advocacy side of things, of what can be done parliamentary level to help minimise the harm that gambling causes society in general.
And look, the government have played their part certainly at state level and federal level in my story.
We'll come back to that in a bit. I just want to touch on, to go back and keep the story succinct. So you mentioned about these suicide attempts and that being your rock bottom of your gambling story.
Yeah, so
What did you do after that?
after that, well, of course, at that stage when you're rock bottom, you've got no money, then I guess you live with what you've done every day, and I still live with that pain now.
What are those feelings?
They're very much feelings of disgust in myself because I was such a good person with money, and
Yeah.
if you ever thought that I'd be in the position I was in now, no, I never thought I'd be in this position. I am,
Yeah.
and I look back at the suicide attempts where you've gone to Centrelink to ask for some money for help you because you've you got nothing, and Centrelink turns around and says to you, "No, I can't help you." The feeling is that there's no way out now. The only way out is to end your life.
So you'd lost hope?
I lost hope. I lost hope. Yeah, I lost hope. There's no doubt about that. I sat on the train tracks in the car ringing my daughter, and my daughter's telling me, "Get off the train tracks. Don't worry. I'll give you some money to help you out." I made a decision. If I hadn't have rang my daughter, I wouldn't be here now. I was in a state that I felt really the only way out is to end my life.
Did you seek professional help at this time?
So I've been under a psychiatrist and psychologist for a good 15 years. Again, when a gambler, going back to the gambler lies. So he doesn't tell the truth. He doesn't tell the truth to his psychiatrist or his psychologist of what he's doing. He just makes up another story.
Yeah.
But when you're taken to hospital by ambulance and under police guard, of course.
Yeah. Mm.
And it wasn't my family that rang 000. Okay, it was actually the gambling agency, which is
The company?
that's right. So
Because you were obviously on the phone to them in a high stress situation.
that's right. That's right. And so 2 occasions there, 3 occasions, 2 occasions they had me taken to hospital under police guard.
Yep.
It's hard to describe exactly how you only have one thing in mind when you want to take your life, okay? Simply want to end your life. Gambling got me to that point. There's no doubt, I had a very tough upbringing as a child, and that doesn't help. But I tried to turn things around when I met my wife, so life was okay for a little while. But when gambling came along, it just consumed my life. Everything
Yes.
I was doing was centered around gambling.
Yep.
And,
It took your life.
it did. I was asked a question the other day. Do you remember who you were before gambling? And the answer I gave was, no, I don't. I don't remember the person I was. I remember the person I became. And yes, maybe I'm still hanging on to that person quite a bit because I am pretty hard on myself. But I have learned to cope. I've been going to counselling for, some 3 years now. And this is gambling counselling through Gamblers Help. And the people, even though I'm not gambling now,
Yes.
still the harm is there. Okay, you're not physically putting money into a machine or, anything like that. But whatever you've done in the
Yep.
past has harmed you.
Yes.
And that sticks with you. I think it's going to stick with me for the rest of my life, to tell you the truth, James.
Yeah.
I am using the.
Can I tell you that this podcast is often about substance? So we
Yes.
often talk about alcohol and drugs and the effects that they have on people's lives. And I'm sitting here considering all the conversations that I've had with drug addicts and alcoholics, and it mirrors exactly the story that you're saying, Shaun. That is, without, speaking with any psychologist's hat on, you've had a traumatic upbringing and you've turned your life into like a meaningful, sensible life, and you've started a family, you've looked after your dollars and cents, and like all of us, along the way, for whatever reasons, some bad decisions have been made. And everybody makes bad decisions in their life. Some of them are small fuck-ups, some of them are a bit more significant. And with alcohol and drugs, and now in the story of gambling, I'm hearing loss, and I'm hearing trauma that's caused to other people around us. And that is now in the past. And I'd like to tell you that I've seen people that have got 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years of sober and clean time where they've changed their lives and have, where they're able to see the decisions that they made whilst being catastrophic at the time and traumatic at the time for others. There is a redemption story. And because we have time on our side, we have time to make amends. We have opportunity to make more money, like create communities, help others, be of service. And you've got a good heart, Shaun. You're obviously giving back.
That's what everyone
You're
says.
seeing others. Yeah. And so others can see that upon you. And, you have the time to do the work on yourself to know that you're lovable.
The one thing you shouldn't do, a lot of gamblers do this, is they hide away. Okay. I guess that's the same for, drug and alcohol addiction too. But
Yep.
certainly gamblers, they don't want to be seen on a podcast or, and certainly someone of my stature that is pretty well known, certainly
Yeah.
in the footy community and the cricket community.
Yep.
I've, I done a episode on Four Corners, last year. I didn't even hesitate. I didn't even hesitate. I want people to know that this gambling is real. It's a really bad addiction, and I'm not trying to say that the other addictions are not bad, because they are. I'm just saying that I want people to recognize that gambling is an addiction. I want, going forward, the future looked after as we all do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that can't be done unless people like myself come out and tell their stories. Now,
yeah. And where else it helps as well, Shaun, is you can have the conversations on a macro level, so parliamentary, government, legacy stuff. What do we want to leave for our grandchildren in the future? And that's what part of this podcast is, because it's going to be captured forever. But also, I look at it on the micro that, like, after I get off this call to you, I'll speak with one of my sponsees who's having a shit time, and I can help his life today. And I can show up to my community of addicts and sit in a room, and we can all talk about what goes on in our day-to-day life and help each other and be there for each other. And I could see, like you are with the Tigers and like you are with the Rebels, there's also like a spot there for gamblers to get together and to talk about their experiences of what they've gone through, but also their experiences of hope and their experiences of recovery, and that you can come through this and life can get better. You can have a really fulfilling life if you just step into it, admit that you've got a problem, and look to get well.
And it's important that you not only do it for yourself, but for your family. And I mean,
Yeah.
the reason I do a lot of this advocacy work is I don't want my grandchildren to grow up in the same kind of world we are in now when it comes to gambling. So,
Yep.
Something needs to be done. There's no doubt about that. It's just, I guess it's just finding the right people who want to acknowledge that it simply is a problem.
Yeah.
We if we look at what gambling basically can do to a person. If they were at the shop and they had no money, a gambler would just put it in his pocket and go.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how
Because we become dishonest.
it changes you into a totally different person. You can't become
Yeah.
dishonest.
And likewise, people steal from their parents.
Yeah.
They neglect their children. They will rob their own grandmother,
Yep.
to get their next dollar, to get
Yep.
their next fix.
That's correct.
Tell me about, before we wind up, tell us about Gamblers Help and the role played in your abstinence from gambling.
Yes, a Gamblers Help, I found them through my daughter ringing up. And
Yeah.
and when they started up, they had this group that would run on a Tuesday night online, and it would go for 8
Yes.
weeks. And they'd give you a book, and they'd run through the book every 8 sessions.
Okay.
It was like my Bible,
Yeah.
It was run by two ex-gamblers.
Yes. So
One
they
of
had
them
lived experience.
Yeah. I got back into counselling at Banyule. Now it's known as Whole Step Health. And if you're in the northern suburbs of Melbourne and you feel you have an issue, I suggest you do ring Gamblers Help and
Yes.
do seek some help through them, because that organisation that I went to, if I had not have went there, I wouldn't be here now, of course. And
Yes.
I'm grateful to that organisation at Whole Step as it is now, of what they've done. The counsellors simply understood me as a person. I've had financial help through the financial counsellor there, because I've racked up money on credit cards, of course, as we all do.
Yeah, of course.
We put ourselves in debt.
Yeah.
So there's that sort of help out there as well. I'm still seeing the counsellor now. I continue to do that because I'm in recovery.
Yes. Yeah.
Still have that demon on my shoulder saying, "Hey, what about doing this?" So it's important.
And what else do you do in your recovery to make sure that you don't gamble each day, each week?
Yeah, so I like to spend a lot of time, I guess, doing new things around the house. That's one thing. I love going to the footy. I love going to the cricket.
Yeah.
I have a passion to help people like you are doing, James.
Yeah.
Would either contact me through, Facebook Messenger and hit me up and ask me what I think. I can only tell people what I've done. there's the National Self-Exclusion Register, which is called Stop, okay?
Yep.
I've signed up to that. I signed up to the day on the day it opened at 9:37 in the morning. I could not wait for that to go
Yeah.
on. I was banging down so many doors,
Yep.
James, with the government to get it going. So it finally got going,
Mm.
and I could say basically I can't gamble online because
Yep.
once the game is registered there, because you've got an option, sign up for 3 months or a lifetime. It was a no-brainer for me. I signed up to a lifetime. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. Good support.
yeah, so you've got that. You've got now that I just became aware and I had forgotten that there was a thing called tab care where I actually can
Yes.
self-exclude myself from going into any outlets
Yep.
or pubs and clubs because they'd pick up my photo
Mm.
and tell me to get out.
Yeah. Right. Amazing.
So I've just done that
Yeah.
recently
Yeah. Great.
because
Yep.
I felt the demon tapping on my shoulder again. So I said to my counsellor,
Yeah.
"Hey,
Yep.
Holst,
Good on you.
I need some help."
Yes. Yeah. And they were able to put those things in place.
Yeah,
Well, Shaun, look, I've really enjoyed meeting you today and hearing your story. I think that by us having this conversation, if it helps one other person, we've done a great job. I can see that you're obviously putting the work in there, like I said, at that macro, at that parliament level. And I think you've obviously got that community vibe where you're involved in the sports clubs and obviously people are starting to recognise you and reach out to you because you're putting your story out there. And I think that that should really be commended, mate, that if we can help one person at a time or many people through telling our stories, the world will be a better and a safer place.
yeah, it would be.
And I'm looking forward to hearing about you continuing to stay on your feet, mate. And I'm sure you've got a long, fulfilling and happy life for you, your wife, your daughter, and your community.
Thanks for the opportunity, James. I really appreciate it.
Have a great day. Thanks, Shaun.
Thanks, James.
Thanks for joining us today on Slaying Sober. If you're sober curious, in addiction, or know someone who could benefit from listening, please share this episode with them. Jump over to Instagram and say g'day at Slaying Sober Pod and follow us on Spotify to hear the latest episodes come out. Until then, keep slaying sober.